Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you all. My name is Marie Craig, and I'm the director of Fountain Street Gallery, where Earthly Bound is on exhibit now until April 2nd. I just want to say hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Ashley Page and Alejandra Cuadra for being here as well to talk about their work. Before we get started, I would like to read a land acknowledgement. We recognize that the ground beneath our feet was once water surrounding the ancestral homeland of the Massachusetts people, and that the area that we know as Massachusetts is the unceded home of the Nauset, Nipmuc, Massachusetts, Pocumtuck, and Wampanoag peoples. Please give thanks and honor to the ancestors of this land. Together, may we create a world in which people, animals, land, and water are recognized and respected. So those of you who are familiar with the gallery, hello and welcome. For people who are not familiar, I just want to give you a brief overview of what the gallery is about. We are in the SoA Arts District of Boston. We were founded by artists in 2011. We show a wide variety of media from regional artists merging in mid-career in our main and annex galleries. And we also exhibit video 24/7 in our sidewalk video gallery. And Alejandra and Ashley's video is playing there right now. So our passion is connecting art seekers and makers through thoughtfully curated exhibits, juried shows, collaborative projects, and installation like Earthly Bound. So this show is the result of our very first open call for curatorial proposals, something that we were delighted to try. We received over 20 submissions. They were all very high caliber. We left it wide open. We were really surprised and delighted at the response we got. The proposals were reviewed by Assistant Director Tatiana Fliss and myself. And after a series of interviews with several of the applicants, as soon as we talked to Alejandra and Ashley, we were sure. We knew immediately that that their vision, their artistry, their collaborative spirit was very much in line with the mission of the gallery, and we knew right away that we wanted to showcase their work. So a little bit about Earthly Bound, which I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about from Ashley and Alejandra when they begin to talk to you. They are, as many of you know, longtime friends and collaborators. They infuse their practices with their personal histories and ongoing explorations that showcase their unapologetic, authentic selves. Their work is mostly mixed media installations that are rooted in traditional methods of craft, like paper making, textiles, ceramic, and they transform these materials into just magic to express the struggle for freedom and belonging. And their work embodies a personal approach to storytelling that gives agency and visibility to underrepresented communities. A little bit about the artists before we let them take it away. Ashley Page sees her work as an ode to the people who came before her, a reflection of the time in which she currently resides, and a point of reference for those in the future. She has a BFA in sculpture and a minor in public engagement from the Maine College of Art and Design. She is an emerging artist recipient, award recipient from St. Bartolf Club Foundation, and participated in a Maine Craft Association apprenticeship under the mentorship of Alyssa Hunter. She lives and works in Portland, Maine, and is the studio and programs coordinator at Indigo Arts Alliance, working at the intersection of art and activism. Alejandra Cuadra's homepage reads, "A persistent and sensitive human, maker, dreamer, and believer." And that nails it. Like, I could stop here. So she also has a BFA in sculpture with a minor in public engagement from Maine College of Art and Design. She has had residencies at Yale Norfolk School of Art, Monson Arts, Watershed Center for Ceramic Arts, and the Ellis Beauregard Foundation. Transplanted from her homeland of Peru, she can never forget where she came from, and she works to reclaim her sense of belonging in the US. She now lives and is finding roots in the greater Boston community, and we welcome her. So that's just a snippet. There's much more information if you're curious about the artists, about their work, about the gallery and the exhibition itself. I put links in the chat so you can follow at your leisure. And now Ashey and Alejandra, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And with that, start our presentation. So, Miss Ashey Page.
Yes, thank you, everybody. While we begin, we'd like to introduce the piece that is in the Sidewalk Gallery called A Letter to the Ocean.
Mother.
Your salt composition matches my own, and I laugh at our similarities. You and I are no different, you see. I am you, and you are me. The push and pull, this give and receive, I wonder if you know how much you mean to me.
Your healing waters meet my own, and the sound of your song lulls me to sleep as your vessel shelters my own. How do I learn to listen to all the mysteries that you hold? How do I learn to give back to you beyond what you give to me?
So vast, so deep in your glory, you shelter me, you give me warmth in times of need, in times of joy.
A home of warmth and a voice of wisdom. It washes away all that doesn't serve me. Doesn't serve me. A siren song, an invitation, a revelation.
I walk in the footsteps and inhale the whispers of those known and unknown to me. I formed this vessel out of mud, water, and clay, and thus I am multiple layers, rooted within the veins of memory.
The wave sings the songs of the living and the hums of the dead. I ask for their freedom, their stead. They tell me I'm a choir, and they tell me to look ahead.
So with that, welcome, and thank you all, everybody. Welcome to Earthly Bound. This collaborative exhibition is the brainchild of myself and my good friend, Alejandra Cuadra. And as longtime friends and collaborators, this exhibition is really a celebration as we weave together our individual discoveries to create a space in which our conversations can come to life.
We wanted to use this exhibition as an opportunity to share how art making is a tool for personal liberation and creative freedom. We are rooted in traditional methods of crafts, such as paper making, textile, ceramics. We infuse our practice with our own personal histories and ongoing explorations, and are showcasing our unapologetic and authentic selves. With this show, there are moments of artistic collaboration and individual expression.
And while collaborating, in addition to the sketches and the writings, we had what we sort of refer to as thematic guideposts. So in our conversations, we talked a lot about fluidity and reflection, nature, water, plants, liberation, and what it means to be free as a woman in this country, in this world. And so while keeping all of those themes in mind, we did what Alejandra and I call a call and response with each other's practice and mediums. So while Alejandra is the ceramicist and I am more so the sort of fiber, basketry, paper making end of things, we created a series of new works that showcased each of our strengths and voices.
These pieces are interwoven throughout the gallery and acts as a binding thread for our individual voices and pieces. And now onto the incredible Miss Ashey Page.
So I am one half of this like collaborative artistic brain that Alejandra and I sort of coined as A squared. So I am a multidisciplinary artist, a community organizer, a curator, a daughter, a big sister, a little sister, a granddaughter, a niece, and most importantly, a lover of community. Alejandra, next slide, please. And I primarily draw inspiration from the world around me. So in my practice, I'm really fascinated by the natural world, the celestial constellations, and how human, plant, and animal societies have created language, culture, and have sustained relationships with one another. I'm a lover of the small details. I love the way a summer breeze tickles the leaves of the trees and how they seem to glitter in the sun. I love watching the push and pull of the ocean's waves and the imprints that it leaves on the sand. Next slide. I love the way a summer breeze, comes in and out of our being and mimics the ways in which our lungs intake air and export. I love seeing the ways in which people adorn themselves with color, fabric, ink, precious materials, and gemstones. And I love seeing the way that community forms. I love witnessing acts of care and kindness among strangers and friends. And on a foundational level, it is really these collected experiences that my work is created out of. Next slide, please. So my work is really made out of every conversation, every touch, every lecture, every photograph, every line I've ever written or read. It is my timestamp. It is the composite of my mother and father, their mothers and their fathers, and the mothers and fathers that came before them. But really, I consider craft, and more specifically, fiber and textiles, to be the axis upon which my practice revolves. And I discovered the joys of textiles as a kid, actually, attending sort of a knitting night hosted by my mom and several of her friends. And, while they like drank wine and ate dinner and hung out and like caught up about their life, I, found myself lost to the act of interlocking threads and passing stitches from one needle to another. And so while my artistic background spans across printmaking, sculpture, and writing, it was really during my undergrad that I figured out truly how to fuse them all together. Next slide, please. And so it was in the fashion and textiles department at Maine College of Art and Design where I explored color, form, technique, and materials in order to tell a story. And in that space of experimentation is when I stumbled across basketry. And a basket, really, in its most basic definition, is, and this is according to Google, is a container used to hold or carry things, typically made from interwoven strips of cane or wire. And technique-wise, there are essentially 3 different kinds of baskets. It's either woven, twined, or coiled. And now, artists have widely expanded upon these techniques and has really redefined what a basket is, how it functions, and really what form it takes. And such is the case with the work on view right now, or on screen, A Portrait from Should to Could, where I use traditional splint weaving as a basis to explore the sculptural possibilities of basketry. And serving as a departure from traditional woven baskets, I wanted to shy away from, what is considered a conventional definition of what a basket is, the role that it serves, as I was much more interested in what these objects could look like instead of what they should look like. And this work is so important to me, and also the other work that's on view, as this is really where I considered, the ways in which the physical body, the human physical body, is a carrier of memory, of lineage, story, voice, life, and drawing lines to how the body, like a basket, is a vessel. Next slide, please. And so at the time that I was making that work, that was really the start of a long line of questioning for me in my work. I began to contemplate what it means to hold something. How do my hands hold the hands of another, or how do my arms serve as a vehicle for care when I embrace someone or something? And so I began to use sort of the term baskets, body, and vessel interchangeably. And something to know about Alejandra and I is that we are also ocean people. We both tend to seek out answers, space, healing, and interconnection when we go to the beach. And so the vessels that are on view at Fountain Street are an ode to those times that I've given the ocean my secrets, my heartache, my stress, my joy, and it's held space for them. So next slide. And as the water really functions as a motif for the work, it's also a reminder of where to return to. It functions as a map. And in such works as Undercurrent, Vortex, and in the next slide, you'll see Cresting Waves, I consider the ways in which our bodies are in relationship with the earthly body that we inhabit. So thinking about, the planet, and really all that goes beyond it. Next slide, please. And in those sort of like questions and in that space, I consider the ways in which we can build, maintain, and reclaim relationships with the land and the water around us. Depending on its state, water can bring life, it can bring death, nourishment, and disaster. So in the series of baskets, it's a reminder that like a body, our water carries, holds, and tells us what it needs. So next slide. And so in thinking about the ways in which we create personal, emotional, and spiritual relationships with the world around us, whether that is intangible or tangible, I created these two works, A Glimmer of Light and A Glint in the Shadows, as a way to depict those relationships and how we are composed of so many different kinds of bodies, whether that be spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, etc. And, in that light, we are a constellation within ourselves. So using these two works both use different braiding hair, shells, raffia, hair beads, wire, and paper. They begin to represent our inner spiritual worlds. Next slide. And so this work, titled Small Pieces of a Greater Whole, spurred one of the pieces that is also on view at the gallery. This initial installation was here at Space, which is based in Portland. It's a gallery and studio and also a performance venue. And this work is about liberation, growth, and creating your own mythologies. So you can see here in the background, there seems to be like a golden waterfall of text, if you will. And this, the text is an excerpt from a work of Audre Lorde's essay titled Eye to Eye, Black Women, Hatred, and Anger, which is a part of her Sister Outsider sort of catalog. And the gold text on the wall reads, "To search for power within myself means I must be willing to move through being afraid to whatever lies beyond. If I look at my most valuable places and acknowledge the pain I have felt, I can remove that source of pain from my enemy's arsenals. My history cannot be used to feather my enemy's arrows then, and that lessens their power over me. Nothing I accept about myself can be used against me to diminish me. I am who I am, doing what I came to do, acting upon you like a drug or a chisel to remind you of your meanness as I discover you within myself." Next slide. And so the work that's on view and that's present in the gallery is titled Small Pieces of a Greater Whole, Origin. And I'm very interested in the ways in which Black and Brown communities impacted by colonization and the intentional erasure of personal and ancestral history use creative expression, whether that's through artwork, whether that's through culture, language, writing, to depict their own histories and thus begin to create an otherworldly present and future. And so with this piece, I am creating my own mythology. I am very intentionally using the sort of central figure as a Black woman and naming her origin. And her body is comprised of shells, pearls, hair beads, steel, orange peels, memory, the sound of waves, the feeling of the wind at your back, and our unapologetic selves. She is all at once emerging and descending. Next slide. And so the last series of mine that's on view in Earthly Bound is a set of 3 small cut paper pieces. They are the imprint of hand-knotted nets that were created in thinking about modes of confinement, capture, and entrapment. And nothing but net, tangled thread, and captured. These are metaphorical sketches, that allude to the social and interpersonal webs that create immobility and depicts how it feels to be stuck. So that's me and my contribution to the exhibition. And so with that, I'd love to pass it on to the other half of this brainchild, my good friend Alejandra.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your work. And thank you as my fellow Virgo sister. So I'm Alejandra Cuadra Sanchez. I process the world through aspects of slowing down, inquiry, and sensibility. Like many people from the diaspora, I gather materials that are accessible and around me and transforming them while adding layers to the metaphors, imagery, and the context of my work. With that, I also have a strong connection to clay, to steel, and to video. As I weave and thread together notions of identity, displacement, traditions, belonging with a strong desire for freedom. I'm seeking to connect to the place where my roots lie in Peru, even if I've been displaced from it from over 21 years. And then I do this through the notion of translation, where things are added and things are lost. My current work reflects my quest for what it means to belong within the body, within the soul, community, and the rooted valleys of Earth. My hope is to create a space where we can hear and feel aspects that beats inside of us within the human heart. In Bell Hook's Belonging, A Culture of Place, Hook states that all aspects of life have revealed to me that the treasures I was seeking were already mine. All my longing to belong, to find a culture of place, were waiting for me to remember and to reclaim. Estoy aquí was a response to that notion and realization that I am here in the place where I belong. And belonging goes beyond a physicality or legality. During my undergrad years at Mecca, my work strongly reflected aspects of migration. For me, it was a way to process, to heal, and most importantly, speak up. The series of work included learning a lot about the resiliency of many immigrants. And growing up, I would hear a lot of different stories and perspectives. And a lot of time, I was guided by fear. The fear that I will hear that knock on the door that will lead to many separations that many immigrants face and still do. In this heavy climate, I've learned to prepare for the worst while holding a hopeful heart. In this photo series, I use the DACA documents, adorning a skirt and my actual employment authorization card. And within my head piece, I'm adorned by paper that resembles the cantuta flower, which is used in the ritual of coming of age. This ritual is a connection for me to where I come from, but also is a representation of the resistance and resiliency and determination that many DACA recipients go through. Whew. We're gonna breathe. So out of that, Entrapment was shortly created after DACA was announced in 2012. And it was a strong seed to many preceding works. During the last couple of years, DACA has been circulating around many courts and with many threats of elimination of the program. With this constant anxiety weighing heavy on the heart, I wanted to harness that strength and create They Stand Tall, which is the steel piece currently at the gallery. And with this, I wanted to think about what it means to take an object that is used to adorn the body and move it to space, and how do we harness that strength and resiliency within ourselves. They stand tall stands in a delicate dance of seeking grounds for roots while feeling uplifted from the earth. So while creating very vulnerable and hyper visible works, it became really heavy. And there was a time during my undergrad that I felt like I needed some space, a space for breath and a space to heal, and a way to honor where I come from, and in a way move beyond fear and be unapologetic DACA recipient, immigrant, woman, and most importantly, human. These works are still political as they don't attempt to assimilate or erase where I come from. In my search through looking at the rich culture of crafts within Peru, I stumbled around this phrase that really stuck to me, where Peru is the land of the Incan, the sun worships. Oh, my accent. The land of the gold, the sweat of the sun, and the land of the silver, the tears of the moon. From that, I created Cómo cantan los ríos de la luna and Pasajes de memoria. These two pieces for me carry this notion of vulnerability and sensibility, especially in talking in relationship to the very male-dominant culture within Latin America. And I wanted to find a way of empower vulnerability while these pieces were created also in 2020, my apologies, in the height when things slowed down in the world and I spent a lot of time with my family. So this was the beginning of thinking a lot about the intimacy of the everyday, the relationships to the rituals around food, adornments of the body, home, and makers of time. I will read a poem that goes along with it. But what is it that I carry as I have gone miles away from the place that was once home? But what can I carry? But can I carry a part of that home, even if I'm here in this place that is now home? I know a part of me is missing. You need to know what lies within, what lies even when the distance sinks. As I continue to walk miles, what I carry keeps getting heavier, yet lighter. As my breath reconnects, my heart beats to the song of my mom's voice, to the song of everyone and everything that makes me feel alive. I'm walking, carrying breath. So, in thinking a lot about the accumulation of experiences and paths and journeys, I reflected on the mythology of the legend of Manco Capa and Mama Oyo, who are the descendants of the sun god and who were given a golden sword to make their way from Lake Titicaca to eventually establish a new civilization in Machu Picchu. For me, in these pieces, I recontextualize the story through the lens of duality in my identity. Feeling neither from here nor there, my hearts and roots lie in two different places, yet I seek to discover my sense of belonging as a state of mind beyond one physical place. So there's a bronze foot to cast parts that I created through different processes, and the sculpted ladies. The butterflies represent migration. The heart is what lies within us. And then the roses are a connection to the Virgin of Guadalupe. And This notion of flowers representing La Virgen de Guadalupe came from slowing down and spending time with my grandparents when I was younger, as they will watch this telenovela that showcase the stories and narratives of many hard situations. And then in the midst of everything, when they were about to lose their hope, a rose would appear as they, and this was referencing the La Virgen de Guadalupe. And even though I stepped away from growing up within a Catholic school, I still felt the sense of connection to this virgin. This piece was for me a way to honor those intimacy and tenderness of my grandparents. Even when they will fight like cats and dogs, they will still sit down at the end of the night and come together to watch their telenovelas and drink some tea and eat some bread. This also is a reflection of hope that lied within the narrative of my family. That my grandmother, for her 80th birthday, took a journey to see the Basilica of the Virgin. And this was the same time where my mom was finding her way and journey back to the States. So this is a reflection and that notion of hope, but also how the Virgin represents the tropes of many immigrants up north. And this is a piece I did first in a different manner, but it remanifested fully now in ceramics. So in relationship to the stories, I connected to the idea of retablos, which is used a lot in Latin American culture. And in the 20th century, as many immigrants were migrating up north, they were using retablos as a way not to go beyond what is depicted in the news or in chart, and to tell the stories that lies within all of us. Growing up, I will have similar retablos, Peruvian retablos, that harness a lot of different narratives with them. And with this painting, I wanted to incorporate text as is commonly used. So the text reads, all the passage we have taken, all the barriers we have crossed, and all the bridges we have created. And it's asking in return, can I call this home? So in a way, this is a call for belonging. And in the last piece that I showcase in the gallery is this really new piece, and thinking a lot about how within Peru there's floating islands made out of local reeds. And I'm thinking a lot about the relationship to the natural world, and how this culture would build all their homes and modes of transportation, while simultaneously thinking a lot about how within this climate, within the climate that we're navigating now, what is our relationship to nature? And thinking also a lot about that relationship to also thinking a lot about the floating islands in the Pacific. So the textile not only draws upon the rich textiles from Peru, but is just using fishing lures to create this pattern. And I'm thinking about plastic and man-made. So with that being said, a lot about all of the work reflects the journey and the experiences, the accumulation, conversations, and talks and perspectives that I gather. As I referenced Ashey title, where things are smaller pieces to the greater whole. In this space, I wanted to share my inquiry, experiments, and failures that led to where I am now. And I'm currently at MatFlat doing a tech program. While I'm still rooted within the knowledge and wisdom that was passed down through my apprenticeship with Steve and Matthew Kemp. So with that being said, we are here together. All of the works in Earthly Bound is a way to honor in our individual selves and also honor our friendship and the mutual respect and support that we've gained throughout the years. That feelingness, the very deep conversations, the thoughts-provoking questions, and those aha moments as we gather, showcasing tenderness to each other and for ourselves. And ate, danced, cried. We did it all. So thank you.
Thank you. And really, I think I might have said this in our introduction, but really Earthly Bound is a celebration. It's a celebration of collaboration, of strength and resilience, and also an opportunity to be vulnerable and to hold space for not only ourselves, but for others. And so just thank you, Alejandra, and thank you, Marie, for making space, not only for us, but for artists who are like us, who make work about, their experiences, whether lived or lost, and their lives. And to be able to have a time and an opportunity and the resources to be able to put together a show such as this is truly such an honor. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here and sharing space with us and being who you are. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Ashey or Alejandra? You can raise your hand, or you can just put a question in the chat and I will read it to them. Does anybody have a question?
I can ask a question.
Hannah?
Hi, guys.
Hey.
I'm just curious, what was your favorite part about working together on this?
I don't know. There's a lot for me. I think because we've been friends for a while and had a lot of conversations, but we joke that we are like each other's half brain, and we will see it when we will like retouch base and being like, I'm thinking about this. Me too. Or like the random like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. bursts of like inspiration that you're like, I had this idea, and we will text each other, and somehow we knew that we'll both be awake. I think that was really great, but also, I feel like every time that I get to spend time with Ashey, not only collaborating, but also just as friends, I get to learn a lot, and I get to laugh, and I get to think a lot, and yeah, just have a good time.
Yeah, I definitely echo all of that. And I think for me, like one of my favorite parts was, well, one, of course, just like spending time together and like seeing all of like the thoughts or the ideas or just like where we were both landing with the work, and just like being like, I'm thinking about this thing, how do you feel? And just like having a soundboard, and not feeling as though it's like, oh, this is all on me, or like, I'm doing this part of the collaboration, but it felt much more like just a reciprocal and holistic relationship and communication, and like way of communicating with another artist, and like with, a friend. And I think because we have like that foundation of just like friendship, and most importantly, like meeting each other where we're at, like as people in the world, it really just made like the creative part all the much easier. But I don't know, I would say my favorite part is probably like sleepovers and then breakfast. So yeah, that's true.
We love food.
We do. Maybe next time. That'll happen in the next show. It'll be a little, just us eating.
Did you see the questions?
I did. There's a couple questions here from Kate. How did you encounter each other in the first place?
So that's a great question. Kind of to speak about it, but so we both went to Maine College of Art and Design, and when it was our junior year, both Ashey and I ended up getting a public engagement fellowship. And that was the first time we kind of like really sat down in the same room and being like, hello, how are you? And in that we were giving some guidance of what we needed to do, but also zero guidance at all, where we just looked at each other and be like, do you know what you're doing? No. Do I? And we both were like, no. So we looked at each other, and it was a very natural transition of being like, let's work together. And out of that grew a lot of collaboration that were centered around aspects of representation, diversity, inclusivity, and I'm forgetting one more actually.
Diversity, representation, equity, inclusion.
Yeah, and it just grew out of that, and wanting to share stories, and also wanting to, again, reflecting, hold space for each other and for others. Yeah, I give you space actually to talk.
No, I mean, I think yeah, just in that space of like, undergoing and like participating in a program, but also it was so funny because, we both applied for this thing, not knowing each other, but also having, it being in the same like sculpture department the same year. And then, I was familiar with Alejandra and her work, but we just like never really had a chance to talk or like, make that sort of personal connection. So the fellowship definitely like gave us that space and that framework in which we could develop a sort of process and like collaborative work. But I think, I think about like the first like time we actually like had a sit down and like actually talked, and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? And she was like, no. And I was like, well, why don't we just do that, but together? And and so it was really from there that like sparked just this amazing collaboration, and like the relationship that we were able to just both contribute to and build together. And I think something that we also really prioritized in those sort of initial collaborations and really beyond was not trying to create things that we think people want or that we think they need, especially doing like a program that focuses on public engagement, that focuses on working directly with the community. We didn't want to just say like, oh, well, I think we need XYZ, or I think this is what the community needs. And so we really approached that work and working within the student body And also just the community beyond the college, as just asking them. We were like, well, how do we know what people need? Why don't we just ask? And so that really served as like the foundation for almost all of the projects that we did stemming out of that fellowship. And really beyond, of just like, taking a beat and like knowing what we need within this time in this space, but also giving folks the agency and the opportunity to advocate for themselves. And that was really, really eye-opening, and has just like led us to where we are today.
Cool.
And through that, it was and still is in a way a call and response in different ways.
Interesting. I have another question here from Patricia. I'm fascinated by the sculptures of women's heads that you've created. Are they you? They don't look like it, but I'm wondering how personal they are.
Is that to me?
For each of you, I think there are women's heads in both of your work.
I think in a way there is an aspect, for me personally, there is an aspect of me. I remember when I first started sculpting the figure, and it was with my mentor Steve, through a project and an internship. He's like, well, you have the model right there. So it made me really stand in front of the mirror a lot and really focus on certain aspects. And throughout the years of just sculpting and being really intrigued by the body, I catch myself leaning away from needing a mirror or pictures to just me being having those basic forms and just sculpt away. So I think it came from that knowledge learned and really looking to now it's just embedded within somehow my hands and what it's translated in through my thoughts too.
My work tends to not be representationally figurative. So even though I'm referencing the body, I'm referencing the self, it's not always, and it does not tend to be say a representational image of a figure or of a face or of a being. Even though they sort of always allude to them, I'm sort of much more interested in how much can I dissolve this figure or this face or this thing for it to still call to this being. And so when I started working on small pieces of a greater whole, I felt it was one, I sort of started with the material. So the figure, the central figures in both of those works is actually an old wig mannequin head. So it already has the form and the structure of a face and of a head. And I was like, this is what I want to use. This is what I'm doing. And so from there, I added sort of an oil-based clay called plasticine on top of it to reinforce the sort of features, because otherwise it's a very, unrealistic depiction of a person. So, it's widening up the nose, giving it cheekbones, giving her a jawbone, also, brow bone, all of those things, and really giving her life. So while it's not necessarily me, I think that it does represent some kind of, I don't know, figure or person, whether that's a fusion of me plus I don't know if anybody is familiar with the oceanic goddess Yemaya, but it's really all of these different people and women and figures. And so when I think about creating mythology, I also think about what do I how do I also impart my own story onto this narrative, and so that's really where that work came from.
Hannah wants to know if you can talk a little bit about the title of the show.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's such a silly thing, but we were calling it for a while. We were like, do we just call it Two Crazy Virgos? And then we were like, we can't do that. So we like came to a point where that's where like Alejandra and I think we're both like very much rooted in astrology as not necessarily as like a way of life, but like more like a general roadmap of like, it's so funny how all of these things align. And also like how the stars are influencing our life, whether that's like through time and like telling time, with the relation with the sun and the moon and the earth. But also just like it's amazing, especially just through time. So anyway, so long story short, because I'll ramble about that for a while. But that said, we were like, oh, we're both earth signs, and this work is so tied to our relationship with the land, and how we maintain that relationship, how we sustain it, and really just how we view the world around us. And so, in talking about and writing about that, we sort of both realized that we were sort of these earthly bound beings. And so that's how the show's title came about.
Yeah, it came through like through a lot of things, but it was, I think, to talk a little bit also about the process and that constant call and response. It was a meeting where we each other sat. We share a Word document, and we're constantly like just like putting all the thoughts with maybe close to zero filter, where we are at one point we're like, let's just call it also trust the vision, because we know what we want, but and in our application, thankfully Marie and Tatiana trusted our vision, as that was one of the requests that we put. But it was just this constant like going off of one another, constant conversation and dialogue that came very naturally, just from the continuous conversations that we have. And also because we are unapologetically Virgos too. But we love poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question? You can just speak up, or you can write something in the chat.
And it doesn't have to be questions either. It could also be like just thoughts or initial reactions. If anybody's seen the show, yeah, just open to that too.
There's some great comments in the chat, which I will save so that you can see those for later. Lots of people are saying wonderful things. Love your work. Beautiful. This is both exciting conceptually and just plain beautiful visually. Thank you for a wonderful program tonight. Wonderful things. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you. Yeah. And kind of to tie a lot of things back to what we wrote, and this being a desire for liberation, vulnerability, to showcase vulnerability, liberation, and femininity. I always say, vulnerability is not our weak bone. Vulnerability is our superpower. And in that, it's for us, again, it was a lot about thinking how we process and find that strength and harness all that strength through making and through connections and dialogue, and allowing ways of healing and finding community, and finding a space where we can feel like we belong, because we do belong. And we're still navigating with many more questions than answer. And we are also, at the end of the day, we are human beings that with flaws and all, we're learning and unlearning at times, and even relearning things. So
Yeah, absolutely. I am right there with you. So with that, I will thank everybody. Yes, Cheryl King, fellow Virgo. Um, yes, we're all Virgos in the house. But
Everybody else.
um,
Love Virgo.
I know, yeah. But with all of that said, really just so much gratitude for everybody who is joining us for this evening. And thank you for sharing your questions, your thoughts, your feedback, and really just your general insight. It means so much to Alejandra and I, as you know, I think we were like writing this proposal and we were like, I hope they understand. I hope that this is okay. Like, I hope, you know, that this is where we are and this is who we are. And so it feels really, really incredibly validating. And also just like really generous. And so, yeah, I thank you all. And I think, you know, Marie and Tatiana and everybody at Fountain Street for being just like so kind and so sweet and thoughtful and considerate in your processes. And I encourage you all to see the show, and it's open until April 2nd. So
Yeah. Yeah, encouraged to see the show, and also in general, finding ways of connecting to one another in places that you inhabit and care about. So, and be tender to yourself and to your childhood self, if that makes sense. I'm working with a lot of kids, so be kind to your younger self. Most important.
Thank you all for being here, everyone. And thank you to Ashey and Alejandra. We'll sign off. And thank you again. Have a good night.
good night, everybody. Thank you.